All right, you can be seated. How are you, mate?
Are these IKEA chairs? Is that an IKEA table? So you've pushed the ball on the budget then?
Yeah, I don't know where they're from, but...
Okay, so see this table here? What use is that for your coffee and stuff?
That's true.
So, okay, so cut it in half, bring these legs here, breakfast in bed table, right?
I like that.
Entrepreneurial moment right there.
Paul, how are you?
I'm improving all the time.
You're aging well.
I'm trying. Mentioning aging well, make sure you buy.
So just so, for some of you who might be here for the first time tonight, Paul Scanlon is a real blessing to Chantel and I and Soul Church. In fact, we were just looking back over the 5 years of Soul Church. We have guest speakers, as you know, but Paul's been the only guest we've invited back every year because he's become a friend and really just helps us think bigger, helps us think wide. And you'll see tonight some of the things we'll talk about, just what a blessing is to the church. So thanks, Paul, for everything you are to us, our church, and Paul travels. How many weeks a year would you be on the road?
Difficult to say. Probably, I don't know, 6 months a year easily I'd be traveling. I have a home in America, so I kind of don't count that as traveling, but I probably should. So I'll spend 3 months a year in America, but I'm in my home there, working in America, but the home is the base that I travel from. So I'm flying less often into America, but staying longer. So psychologically, I feel I'm not traveling to America as much because I'm flying less but staying longer. So adding that in is probably, 6, 7 months of the year. I'm somewhere.
But born in sunny Bradford?
Well, no, born in Dewsbury, a small town about 20 miles from Bradford, Dewsbury, D-E-W-S-B-U-R-Y. I know nobody cares, but I'm spelling it because I came from there. But Bradford for a long time now, and it's funny because when I'm around the world and people say, where are you from? I say England. Then I know what's coming next, where are you from? And I know I'm going to have to say Bradford, and they're going to say, is that near London?
We know the pain of that.
Right. All my life, I've lived in places that are located by more famous places. But that was Jesus in Nazareth, so we're in good company.
Yeah. And just give us just quickly a little bit about your background, Paul, a couple of minutes about abundant life, transitioning out of that into what you're doing now.
Pastored for 32 years. The two matter. The two matter. I could say 30 and leave it, but the last two were painful. So 32. And then in 2011, transitioned out of that into what I am doing now around the world, which is a combination of speaking in churches, which I love, and speaking in corporate settings, which I enjoy, and I'm doing more of that. And then doing my seminars, the Growing Big People here yesterday, and the masterclass, communication masterclass, which I've done here before. That's a 6-hour event. Yesterday was a 3-hour event. A new seminar I'm launching soon, my first one in Australia soon, called The Prosperity of the Soul. You're welcome. So, yeah, I'm doing a combination of those things, and I'm trying to, do well online, put out good material online, put out good content online, social media. You should all be following me on social media. If you're not going to go to heaven. I know. Don't seem so surprised. Why would you think you get to heaven if you don't follow me on social media? So I'm giving you a heads up so there's no surprises at the pearly gates for any of you. So I'm a late developer to social media compared to a lot of you guys, but I think it's a great medium. So that takes up quite a bit of my time. Posting things on there, a lot of videoing to post online and so on and so on. And this Aging Well product is a new digital product only. It is 60 videos, 11 hours about aging well that Hannah can tell you about tonight if you're interested in that. So that is a lot of my time that I couldn't do pastoring, just too much time to sit and commit that stuff to video or to audio. So I'm enjoying the freedom to do that.
Fantastic. Now, what we're going to do is there's a number that can come up behind me on the screen. If you want to text in a question to Paul about anything to do with life, leadership.
Uh-oh. Don't.
Anything off limits. Nothing's off limits. So you can send those through to me and that will come up. But I want to just start with a couple of questions, Paul. You made a statement last time you were here. It wasn't a throwaway statement, but you said it just as you were concluding one of your messages. And you said that too many millennials are falling in love with the church and not with Jesus. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I don't think I said falling in love with the church. That's because that would be okay to a degree. What I meant was, I think if you are born in a Christian home, I wasn't, my kids were. So if you're born into a family that already attends church, you are not the first generation to do that in your family. So you're not growing up in a home where going to church was weird. So when I first started going to church in my teens, it was the weirdest thing in my family because it is so non-cultural to do that in this country. And nobody in our family ever attended church. So I went through all the suffering of being the first weirdo in my family to go to church. So I couldn't listen to Christian music in my home. I couldn't have Christian friends in my home. I had to kind of lie a little bit about where I was going because I was going to church 3 times a week, and once would be excessive as far as my parents were concerned. I couldn't read my Bible in my home. So all of those things that my kids took for granted, I pioneered in my family. But it's not that the second generation, my kids, don't have a separate kind of challenge, which is they meet the church before they meet Jesus. So kids that are brought to church all their life, and I never was. So if you're brought to church by your parents, you kids in here, if your parents bring you to church, from birth kind of thing, or early in your life, you're driven to church every Sunday. You don't choose to come. It's not your idea. It's your parents' idea. But eventually, and this is happening quicker than ever with the millennials and the teenagers, eventually your own sense of independence wakes up in you. And you're like, hang on a minute. There's nothing in my life that I'm taken to anymore except church. And what happens is we begin to form a relationship, the kids do, with the church. And then they have a crisis, usually in their teenage years, of identity, because they realize they have no relationship of their own with God. They have a relationship with the church, and they get confused between the two. And they get confused between loving God and being involved in the church. So they give their life to the church, thinking they gave their life to Christ. And eventually those chickens come home to roost. So in America right now, statistically, late teens, early 20s, university age, by their millions are leaving the church. Because it's the first time they've been away from home. They're not under their parents' eye to make them go to church or give them a hard time if they don't go. So it's the first time they're off the parents' radar. And now they decided, now I get to choose myself. I'm not going to church. And the reason they say they turned off church is, they say church is threatened by sexuality issues. We're very narrow-minded about it. The kids are saying that. Back to the church. They're saying that the church is threatened by doubt, and you young people have lots of doubts, and that's healthy. So when we express doubts, we're made to feel bad, and people try to fix us, so we feel ashamed and guilty to have a doubt, like we're some kind of not hardcore Christian enough. So the church dishes that out to them. Or they feel the church is threatened by their vocational choices, so they choose a career in sport, or a career in media, or acting, or science, or politics. And the church feel that if you go into that, you're going to leave the church and get lost in a career. So the kids feel eventually that they can't stay in the church anymore because they never found Christ early enough as their glue. The church is too weak of a glue. And then the church, as they aged and got more independent-minded, felt threatened by them. So when they got the first chance, they left the church. So it's a massive issue for all of you young people and parents in here. Just be aware, you don't want your kids to form a relationship with the church and let them think that's a relationship with God. Because when a relationship is hidden inside religion, it's difficult to separate them out. So when Jesus is in the mix of church stuff, it's difficult to spot Jesus from church stuff. So what we do in the church is we have these systems, organizational things. Our dashboard is, metrics and numbers and attendance and giving and small groups. And so you comply. So what happens is with young people, they have a life of compliance to what the church requires of them. And the thing is, Jesus is far easier to love than the church is. Because the church will be far more demanding than Jesus would ever be. Because Jesus is far more loving and gracious and kind than the church is. So the kids find it hard to accept the church as Jesus, because they know the church is not tolerant of me, the church is threatened by me, the church is unkind to me. If I'm different at all, I feel persecuted in the church. If I'm not hardcore enough, I feel guilty. And God does not make you feel any of that. The church do. But because you think it's God making you do it, and you don't realize it's the church systems, you get mixed up. And so God gets a bad rap because of the church.
Someone's texting, I feel like my life is stuck. Can you help?
Is there an age of this person?
I think it's in the 20s, yeah.
Okay. Stuck is not a bad thing, okay, first of all. We've all been stuck in life. I've been stuck many times in life, so don't think the word stuck is instantly a crisis. It's not. So if you're stuck, you've got to try and figure out why are you stuck? I suppose you've asked yourself that question. If you have the self-awareness enough to know you're stuck, you can't stop there. Find out why you're stuck. What is it that makes you think you're stuck? Why do you think you're stuck? So you need a conversation with someone that has no agenda, that won't project guilt and shame on you. This is what I just said a minute ago about talking about being stuck. Don't have anybody try to lay a hand on you and fix you and pray for you. Stay away from those idiots. I'm being serious. Because what this does is, seriously, this is why I'm talking about the soul around the world. What this does is we concrete over the soul. We concrete over your stuckness. And your stuckness may be a real issue that needs to be figured out, or it will haunt you in 20 years still. And you'll go through life having seasons of repeated stuckness on the same issue. That's why I said the age. Because if you're in your 20s, you're young enough to figure out what is this. And it could well be something from your nurture, from your childhood, from the way your parents raised you, from some default behavior that they didn't know they passed on to you. It could be an event, an experience. It could be something harmful that happened to you. It could be something that made you fearful and insecure, that's made you stuck. Figure it out as best you can. So that is not fixed by, in the name of Jesus, don't be stuck. Stay away from that stuff, because it's killed us in the church for too long, as that shallowness about stuff. Try and talk to someone if you can and say, look, I feel stuck. And if they don't say to you what I started saying to you, hey, I've been stuck lots of times, you talk to the wrong person. If you say, I feel stuck, and they say, oh, that's terrible, you shouldn't be stuck as a Christian, don't talk to them anymore. Okay, so be careful who you talk to. Stuck is okay. Try and figure out why you're stuck, and then try to take small incremental steps to getting unstuck, and don't tell people about it. Don't go into therapy. Don't have a sponsor. Don't have how are you doing on your stuckness today? Just privately work away at things until you start to feel what you would call less stuck. And you'll know what that feels like. If you know what stuck feels like, you'll know what less stuck feels like. So try to track it when it becomes more, I just don't feel stuck anymore like that. I feel a bit freer now in that area. Good. But if you don't figure out why, you won't know how to repeat it. So I would handle it that way. When I've got stuck in my life, I have handled it that way. Stuck often means you've got to move away from some people, move away from mindsets, move away from some emotional parking up we've done, move away from some habits, some behavior, default things we have. It's a combination of those things, but it's no big deal. Work on those things and just get unstuck and become a getting unstuck Jedi in your life. So you're not scared of being stuck anymore because you've figured out how to get unstuck, and that becomes your gift to the rest of us.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Great question.
Friday evening, we were listening to kind of 10 lessons that you've learned in your life, Paul, and they were brilliant. One of them that really stood out to many of us was this question: speak from your scars, or the comment, speak from your scars, not from your open wounds. Do you want to just expand that a little as Sam brings?
I have my water person here.
Water boy.
He travels with them around the world. Pour it, for crying out loud. Thank you. That's my little bit of diva there. Thank you. You may go, it's not about you. I notice people's trousers are getting shorter. You might as well have shorts on tonight.
He was at Growing Big People. So.
There you go. Yeah. They were down to your shoes when he left here, eh? You've gone 3 inches. But I've been in Bradford. Speak from your scars, not your open wounds. Yeah. It's my way of saying I think we live in a world where we are not doing that. So think Oprah, not Jeremy Kyle, for your life.
Just let that go in for a sec. Just let that digest.
We got too many people bleeding all over on the internet and in life, and we are speaking too soon about stuff that we just need to wait a while till we figured some stuff out. That's why the stuckness thing matters. So let your wound heal. Let it scar over. Figure some stuff out. And I think we'd like to hear from you then more than we would in the middle of your bleeding, because when you speak from your wounds, you haven't figured anything out. It's drama, it's reaction, it's exaggeration, it's ranting, it's looking for sympathy, maybe a listening ear. And I understand all of that because I have spoken from my wounds in my life too many times. But I just think I learned it's better to wait and wait till your wound becomes a scar and your scar becomes an act of service. Wait till your scar becomes useful to someone else that's going through something similar. That's who we want to talk to us, I think. So it's that I meant about the metaphor of wounds and scars. Just wait a while and condense it into some wisdom, and then write the book, and then put the post out, and then share your story, and then pass it over to us. Otherwise, it's lost on us. And all you do when you speak from your wounds is you attract wounded people. And wounded people find wounded people. And our common denominator is woundedness. And it's not progressive. No one's going anywhere. We're just gathering around our pain. And many people park up for years in their pain. And some entire nations park up in their pain and stay there for generations, and the pain becomes generational. So I think the wisdom of life to me at this stage, with all the stuff I've gone through of wounding, is I think on balance, at this stage of my life, I'd want to say that to a younger me. To a younger me, I'd say, wait till your wounds become wisdom, and then speak to us from that.
Big open wound in our nation right now is Brexit.
Brexit.
The B word. Just speak into that a little bit. As Christians, as believers, people in church tonight, how should we pray? What should we, solve it, Paul?
Well, Brexit, for a start, Brexit is a freaking dog's breakfast, right? You know what I mean by that? It's a mess. Yeah. And it didn't need to be. I voted to leave, so I just need to set that up front, so I'm not neutral up here, okay? So the problem is since the vote to leave, we have a leave country run by a Remain government. There's bound to be a problem. Anytime we vote for something that our leaders don't agree with, but they have to lead that anyway, there's going to be foot brake everywhere. There's going to be delayed tactics. So right up to now, as you all know, everybody's having an opinion to slow it down, including Tony Blair. He pops up from the sidelines trying to slow it down with his agenda. Whilst those of us that voted leave, which were a majority, I know we're only a small majority, but anything, forget Brexit, anything that was voted on as a majority, it should be delivered by our government. We never voted to go into Europe. And the moment we were given a voice outside of London, hello, this is what cost David Cameron his job. Because David Cameron thought the country would no-brainer vote to stay, because that's what the London-Westminster bubble is telling him. But the moment the rest of us get a voice, because there is an England outside of London, London people don't know that. So the rest of us got a voice, and it shocked Cameron, cost him his job. Then he gave a graveyard pass to Theresa May. I feel for her. I really do. I think she's doing the best she can with an awful situation. I think we'll leave. I think we'll leave with a deal. I don't think it'll be a great deal, but I think we'll leave with a deal. And if we leave with no deal, we'll be fine. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, for crying out loud. Who's not going to do business with us? So I think there's a lot of drama, a lot of ramping by politicians, and they're ramping it up because they have a vested interest in staying in Europe. A lot of them are not telling you why they're championing it, because a lot of them have vested interests financially, position-wise, career-wise, in staying in Europe. So there's a lot of contamination in it for the politicians in the way they deliver it to us. It makes no difference whatsoever to the church or to your faith or what we're doing. It is irrelevant to us. So people ask me, how does it affect the church? It doesn't affect the church. Whether it's in or out, we've had massive global shifts in history, far worse than this. And the church has just kept growing and emerging, doing our thing. So we'll be okay. But I do think it's good for us to have an awareness of it. I think we should pray for our politicians. I'm not sure what we should pray sometimes. But I have felt for, and I've felt empathy for, and I've prayed out of that empathy for Theresa May. I feel, first of all, she's a woman in a man's world. And that's difficult for a start. I think she's been hijacked by a massive problem from day one. And I feel for her because I've been there too with massive problems I've felt I inherited in leadership. So I'm praying for her because I can empathize with something she's going through from my history. But whatever the outcome is, we'll be okay, is my ultimate, I think. I'm so tired of it kind of thing. I used to keep up to date with it, watch it. I don't even watch it in the news. It's the same old, same old. So-and-so has an opinion. And the politicians don't realize nobody freaking cares anymore. It's like, just sort it out. Donald Trump would have sorted it out a year ago. Seriously. He would have fixed it. I'll tell you why he would have fixed it, because he's not a politician. He's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur, and he understands deals. So we say to Europe, we want this, this, and this. If not, get lost. We'll do it without you. Basically, Trump would have brokered a deal, and it would have been cutthroat and brutal, and would have had it sorted by now. But politicians go on forever, everybody's opinion, not standing on those people's toes. Trump doesn't care, which is why a lot of Americans and others like him. Because when Trump talks, you don't wonder what he means. When politicians answer a question, you think, did they answer the question then? Not with Trump.
All right, we'll get on to a less controversial question.
I like those ones, though.
You like those ones? All right, we'll stay there. What advice would you give a young leader? One of our young leaders has texted in saying, what advice can you give me as a young man?
I would say to young people, I would say to a younger me, so I would say this to a younger you, I think, because I think this is something healthy to say to all young people, not just my younger version of me. 8 out of 10 things that you are told about you in your youth will turn out to be wrong. But because of who told you them, you'll believe they're right. And you'll suffer because you believe them. 2 out of 10 things you're told in your youth will be true. And those 2 things will become your superpowers. But they get lost in all the things you are told about you. And you'll spend years feeling bad and trying to improve things that they told you were a problem in your life. And you'll waste a lot of years like I did, and the church has its own version of loading that on us. Coming back to that second generation problem. And I think I lost a lot of years trying to fix things that I was wrongly told were true of me in my formative years, because I respected those that said it to me. Eventually I realized, I think in my early 20s, so early enough to sort of benefit from it in my life, that a lot of the things I was told about me were not true, and I should never have let it define me or try to fix it. But the things that were true, I began to work on and build on. So I think all of you young people, there are lots of voices in your life. That's why I said, how old's the stuck person? Because if you're a young person in here stuck, and you ask the wrong person, I'm stuck, they're going to tell you why they think you're stuck with their agenda. Well, I've told you, you're stuck because, and they'll give you all these things that they don't like about you. And they use your stuckness to cash in on their agenda. I had so many of those conversations in my youth. And it was like putting the boot in every time. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's my pride. It's my arrogance. It's my ambition. It's my ego. And I'm all the time trying to fix me because I'm a terrible person. And I realized none of that was the issue. And if someone had said to me, listen, son, it's okay to be stuck. We all get stuck in life. If somebody had said that to me, I'd have thought, oh, thank God. So I'm saying to young people, I would say to you, going back into those shoes I was wearing where you sat tonight 40 odd 50 years ago. Remember when people are talking to you, sometimes just have it back in your mind. I think most of this is rubbish. I think most of this is not true. It's okay. Don't say that out loud. But just think, I don't think, no, you don't even know me to say that to me. That's not right. No, I'm not one of those people. Don't broad brushstroke me is what you should be saying to yourself. Then when you go away, just edit it and try and take out the good bits. There's probably good in there somewhere. Try and take the good bits and protect yourself from that stuff that is going to wrongly define you, and then don't stick around those people anymore if you can avoid it. If it's your family and your parents and so on, it's not as easy to be away from it. But you still got to find ways to neutralize it if it's family, because it's just as damaging with family, and it's more difficult to get free of it because you can't, be away from it and step away like you can a friend. That comes to mind as worthy of saying to you guys. And I think what I must add to that, and what I'm really saying in that, is be yourself. The sooner you can figure out who yourself is, you are a way to go. The sooner you stop being someone else's version of you and stop doing things to keep them happy and stop studying subjects because they want you to excel at school and stop learning the piano because your parents are musicians and stop playing sport because your dad wants to be a footballer because he didn't and he wants to vicariously be one through you, or whatever parents want for their kids. I understand parents, desires for their kids, but a lot of parents are putting a lot of stuff on kids that they shouldn't. So you've got to not let your parents make you into their version of you, because every one of you were born a complete genius and a complete original. But what no one tells you is the day you were born is the last day of freedom you'll ever have. It's the last day God had you to himself. After that, he risks you with people. And from the day you're born, the world starts shaping you into their version of you. And there's never been a time like this for those voices to access your world of putting layers on you. That's why I said in the Growing Big People seminar yesterday, the education system is killing our kids. It's trying to, that's right, yay. Because it's got a one-size-fits-all approach to humans. And the schools are obsessed with SATs and results and tests and Ofsted reports that are nothing to do with kids. So the school is killing our kids. I've got 8 grandkids, all in school, suffering from the school system, and 2 of my grandkids are weird. Maybe more, but at least 2 are weird. Their weirdness, I think, is their superpower. But the school's trying to fix them already, and it worries me. So I'm trying to have a voice around the world about that to young people who no one said that to me at school when I was made to feel bad about not being great in academics. Because the question is not how intelligent are you. That's the school's obsession. How intelligent are you? Got to measure it, test it, get it up the grades, get you an A, not a B. You're a fail if you got a B. You're a fail if you got a C. How intelligent are you is not the question. The question is, How are you intelligent? That's the question.
I know a lot of us were taken back, really challenged by some of the things you said about the education system. Would you just recap that story? It was Esther, your daughter. Just tell us and the history. I thought that was brilliant.
My daughter Esther hated school. My youngest daughter, she hated school. I got 4 daughters, but she hated it. She was the kid, like some of you are, and some of you were, dragged out of bed every morning to go to school, pulling a sickie every time she could. Oh, I don't feel well, Dad. And I knew full well she felt great. By 10 o'clock, she was out of bed dancing around because the school time had passed. Anyway, what I'm saying now about education, I didn't have the language for it back then, but I'd started to read books that were making me aware of the damage the education system was doing to kids. And I had Esther still at the back of her school, and she was 16 going for GCSEs. Parent-teachers evening, I went. Parent-teachers evenings are rigged. If you have a long appointment, you're in trouble. So I have 20 minutes with Mrs. Smith in history. And I think, ooh, we're in trouble in history. So I go in and Mrs. Smith says, Mrs. Scanlon, we have a long appointment because Esther is not going to pass GCSE history. It's 3 months away, the exams, and she is really way behind. But with your help and ours together, we're going to get her a pass. Won't be an A or a B, but we might get a C or a D kind of pass. Here's the plan. Extra homework. Give me all that extra homework regime plan. Staying after school, doing extra history, gave me that idea. Remedial history, some kids that are better in history than her would coach her, mentor her, gave me that idea. Give me the whole spiel. Now, Mr. Scanlon, I'm sure we can rely on your support. I said, no, you can't. She's like, Mrs. Smith, I remember it now. She sat bolt upright. What? Excuse me, did you say no? Is there a problem? I said, yeah, there's a problem. The problem is my daughter hates history. I said, Mrs. Smith, let me just say to you, has it occurred to you not everybody loves history? Has this occurred to you? We're glad that you love history. You should because you teach it. But has it occurred to you that not everybody does? I said, in fact, do you know these kids are not in history because they want to be? They're in history because the bell rang. That's school, isn't it? That's school. The bell rings, and it doesn't matter whether you adored geography and you'd stay in geography all day. The bell rings, you've got to leave something you love and go to something you hate because the school are obsessed with making you an all-rounder. So I said, Mrs. Smith, a bell rings, the kids come in, they sit down. Most of them don't want to be there. They love 3 subjects ago. They'd stay there all day. But it's the bell rings because the schools came out of the Industrial Revolution. Schools are built on factories. That's where they came from in the mid-19th century. So schools are built on a factory model. So the bell rings, kids go to history. I said, so Esther's here because the bell rang. She don't love history. I said, isn't history about remembering dates? Historical dates and kings and queens and dynasties that nobody freaking cares about? She said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, like, I don't know. And I don't know where this came from. I said, 1066, Battle of Hastings. King Harold got the arrow in the eye in the Norman invasion. The Norman invasion. You've had one of those here. Keep an eye on these people. Them Normans have invaded before. So I said, isn't history about that kind of thing? She said to me, Mr. Scanlon, I'm so impressed that you remembered that from your history. I said to her, no, don't be impressed. It's the first time in 45 years I've ever used it. That's how useless it's been. Don't get excited, Mrs. Smith. I'm not on your side here. I said, listen to me. Esther's going to fail history, and I don't care. I do not care. Do not send extra homework. I'm doing enough homework already. Hello. She said, I'm so surprised. She said, I'm so disappointed and did that teacher education thing on me. I'm so disappointed, Mrs. Scanlon. And the might of the government was behind her, and she knew it. And because I'm taking on the might of the mighty government educational system is what I felt. Wasn't Mrs. Smith I'm talking to. I'm talking to the entire government in her. And she knew it. So do doctors. So do dentists. So do people that are in professional, roles in our country. They intimidate you with their connectedness. That's why revolutions often are the only things to change this stuff, like Brexit. So, hello. So I said to her, there'll be no extra homework. Esther's going to fail. I don't care. And I said, I don't care because this school doesn't care about what Esther loves. You make her feel bad for what she's not good at, but you don't balance that out by celebrating what she is good at. So she just feels bad at school all the time. School is the place where she feels so unvalidated. She feels the least endorsed. She feels useless and hopeless and guilty and ashamed. School is all those things for her. She fails at school. But I said, you don't know Esther is brilliant at something. She said, what? Because Esther is not good in any subject at school. She said, what is she great at? I said, the very fact that you don't know is the problem. I said, my daughter Esther is brilliant with kids. And she was, and I don't know what to call it. She was 16, and all her life, she had this intuitive, emotional intelligence about kids. I don't know what to call it. I'll tell you how superpowered it was. If you had a screaming baby and gave that screaming baby to Esther, and you're the screaming baby's mother, you couldn't calm the child down. You give that kid to my daughter, it would go into a coma. And I think that's a superpower, and I think people might pay you for that. And I told the teacher that, and she said, oh, I didn't know that. And then she couldn't resist what she did next, because these educational, obsessed people that think that's all that matters. She said to me, well, Mrs. Scanlon, if she wants to work with children, she'll still have to pass exams. Just that putting me back in my place, we are the people that are controlling all these people's futures. I said, Mrs. Smith, we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. So I left. And I went home and I told Esther what I've told you. And Esther's like, oh my God, Dad, you didn't tell Mrs. Smith that, did you? No. What? You said what? You said I'll fail history and you don't care? High five, Dad. So she failed history. 3 months later, and she failed history, science, maths, a few other things. So 3 months later, we're in church. She's a bit down, fed up, thinking I've got to go, work at McDonald's or stack shelves at supermarket, blah, blah, blah. Nothing wrong with that if you feel it's the love of your life. But for most people, it's kissing a frog till the prince comes. Just don't marry it and mistake it for the prince, okay? But sometimes you've got to pay the bills, and I get all that. Anyway, so she wants to work with kids, doesn't know how it's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Comes to me in the crowd crying. Sunday morning church, after church, crying with a fistful of money. Says to me, Dad, you won't believe what's happened. I said, what in the world's going on? Why are you crying? Where's the money from? She said, I got a job. I said, what do you mean you got a job? It's church. What do you mean you got a job? She said, and Bradford City at that time, here's what happened. We're in the premier football division in this country. We weren't there long. It's easier to get there than it is to stay there, as with most things in life. So we were signing some of the top players. So we signed this player and his family, and they were Christians, churchgoers, and they were attending our church. I didn't know this. So this guy and his wife had signed to the club, had moved in a village near where we lived, were coming to church for 2 or 3 weeks and needed a nanny. They had a 3-year-old, and the next one was due in 3 months, and on the grapevine he found my daughter in the crowd. Said to her, I hear you've left school. I hear you're great with kids. I hear the pastor's kid. So you're from a good home, blah, blah, blah. Did a little on-the-spot little chat. Said, can you start tomorrow? And I said, well, what's the money? She said, he asked me, can you drive? I said, no, I can't drive. It's expensive to get lessons. So he said, I need you to be able to drive to work for me. And pulled out of his pocket £1,000 cash. Who has that money on them in church? I'll tell you who. Footballers and criminals. Sometimes both are the same. But either way, we'll take the money because we are donation-dependent charities. So we ask no questions. So £1,000, I said, whoa. And he said to me, when that runs out, come and I'll give you more because I need you to learn to drive. He was good at football, but not good with money, which is often the case too. Because he took 5 driving tests. It cost him a fortune. But I couldn't resist what I did next to finish the story. I said, whoa, stop. I said, Esther, did you tell him you failed history? It was so naughty of me, but it made the point. No one freaking cares. Yay! And she's still working with kids now. 18 years later, she still works with kids. Not had to pass exams. The one she did, her sister helped her, so she was fine.
Brilliant. If you've got any email feedback after tonight, send it to alancooper@soulchurch.com. Let's wrap this up. A big Paul Scanlon statement that stuck with me for a long time is, live full, die empty. And in fact, that statement, you came over to Cape Town probably 10 years ago. You spoke a message in our staff meeting which really started the progress of us thinking forward and what our next chapter was going to be off the back of that statement. Just explain that a little bit more, and maybe it can help push some people tonight into a new season.
It came to me from an idea I got by reading an obscure story, and we read one of those this morning about Shibboleth. An obscure story in Kings where the Israelites were fighting, I think, the Philistines. Not that it matters like history, it doesn't matter. But they were fighting some bad guys. And one of them got killed. One of the soldiers, one of their colleagues. They didn't have time to bury him. So they literally threw his corpse into a nearby cave and took off and left him. Inside the cave were the prophet Elisha's bones. When this dead man's body hit Elisha's bones, he came back to life. I promise you it's in the Bible. I'm not making it up. That stuck on my mind after I read it. Because this is the question I asked myself when I read that story. What was that power doing hanging around in that man's bones? Why wasn't it spent? Why was that energy, that power, still stuck in a cave, not helping any human beings? And as I studied it, I realized that Elisha did not die empty. He tried to give away his power to his successor that he thought would be a guy called Gehazi. Gehazi was not a good person. Gehazi was a mixed up character, and he couldn't pass on his heart to Gehazi because Gehazi had his own agenda. So I think Elisha died desperately trying to get rid of what he wanted to pass on and mentor and coach others in, but no one took it off him. So I think Elisha died with this power still locked up in him. So he's dead, he's gone to heaven, but his power stays here, buried somewhere in a cave, nobody been helped, till a random dead guy hits the bones, comes to life. So at least it helped him. From that I took this idea that I think God wants us as his people, and I think all humans, but especially the church. I think God wants us to live full. That's good. But the idea is you better not die full. You need to die empty. Aye, aye.
There it is.
Last orders, towels over pumps, that means. That's what they did in my generation, you know. Flash the lights, last orders. Get off. We get it, we're out of here. So I began to teach around the world that I think God wants us to live full and die empty. So we built churches where we're getting too full and too fat, and we've got obese Christians. We've got too many overfed, under-exercised churches. We're getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter, you know, with the presence and the love and the glory and the anointing and the power and the preaching and the fellowship and the love and the friendship. We are gorging ourselves on this banquet in this room tonight, as it were, or our church life. And we're not giving it away quick enough. And I think the idea I realized, because our church got into trouble this way, we were so full that when I started bringing in empty people, all hell broke loose of an attitude of negativity and resentment towards the people that needed our help. We should have emptied into them. Instead, we marginalized them and we judged them because they were drug addicts or prostitutes or homosexuals or whatever. And I thought, we're in massive problems here, because all of our theology is the opposite to that. But our behavior was shocking to these people. So I put it this way. If God is giving you a gift voucher called your life, and your life has to be spent and used on this planet, it's like having a gift voucher for Harvey Nicks and trying to spend it in diesel. You can't. You can only spend it in the shop it's allocated to. And what you do not spend on earth, you cannot later use in heaven, because no one there needs it. So Elisha's got his power stuck in his bones because he didn't spend it in earth, and he can't take it with him. So it's trapped, helping nobody. And churches around the world have got trapped strength and love and kindness and inclusion and second chance and believing in people and loving people and serving people and mercy and all this stuff we have, and it's trapped inside the bones of our churches. And every week we dance around it and celebrate it and get stronger and more power. And we got to start giving it away, guys. And it doesn't need to be perfect or said well or rehearsed or a divine appointment or a special moment. Stop looking for that stuff. And just, I tell you tonight, just when you leave this building, just lift your chin and notice people. Notice someone tomorrow, the guy that's, or the lady that serves you the coffee at the coffee shop. Lift your chin and lock eyes with them and say something nice to them. Your hair looks lovely today. I like your tattoo. You know, I like your ring. You look really tired. I hope you're getting some sleep. Or I love coming here. You're my favorite barista. Or whatever. Or there's an extra quid for you. I want you to have that. Or I don't know, whatever. Buy someone else in the line a drink. Or be kind to the guy at the petrol station who hates his life. He hates his job. And then people treat him like crap, who think they're better than him or her. Then you walk in and you know stuff they don't know, and you're in this church. You're getting filled and you're happy and you're blessed, but you're not giving it away. And don't tell me I'm giving it away when God uses me to reach that important person, because you're not going to do it there if you don't do it here. So I'm just saying, and I said this to our church, let's just stop trying to have some specific, special, significant encounter. Stop it. Will you just be kind to your family? Will you just be kind to your neighbors? The people in your gym or your life's routine, start to empty yourself out to them. And it's not big. Listen to me. One act of kindness. I said to a guy somewhere in the world, in Singapore, he was serving me in the hotel, and I like shoes. And I said to him, I love your shoes. And you know what? He stayed at my table and he hovered around my table all day. The next day I went in, he saved me a special table that overlooked the whole city, the best table in the place. Mr. Scanlon, I've got you the best table. I never asked him for anything. All I did was notice his shoes. Some of you are trying too hard to reach people. Just start noticing people's shoes. You're praying for a massive connection. Stop it. Just notice people. I said, your shoes are awesome. Where'd you get them from? Told me about his shoes. He used to fly with BA cabin crew. Bought them in Italy on one of his stopovers. They're Italian shoes. Told me all about the shoes, where he was when he bought them, how much he loved Italy. And he and I were in just the flow. I invited him to church. He said to me, Mr. Scanlon, he said, I don't think I would be welcome in that church. I said, why? He said, because I'm a Muslim. And he said, I'm not a very good Muslim. He said, because I drink beer and I eat pork. He said to me. So I said, you know what? You'll be fine, because that church is full of people that are not very good Christians. You'll be fine. And I said, I'm one of them. I said, I'm not a very good Christian, and I'm speaking. So I said, you'll be fine. He said to me, he said, I'll think about it. Anyway, I told him the service time, and I said, if you come, I promise you, if you come, I will make sure you feel very welcome. So in the service, in that morning, there's 10,000 people in the service. So I said, his name was Jose. I said, is Jose here? He works in my hotel. I said, he and I have been chatting the last few days. I invited him to church. He said he wouldn't come because he's not a very good Muslim. I told him he's all fine because we're not very good Christians, are we? Singaporean people. They're like, what? We're not very good Christians. What? We speak in tongues and stuff. What? I said, is Jose here? And I waited for such a long time. It felt like 10,000 people just hanging around for Jose. Like, please. I waited. Nothing. I was just about to move on, and then a hand went up on the very back seat, on the top of the rake seating. I saw a silhouette. I said, Jose, you are there. We welcome you this morning. I didn't tell him at the hotel there's 10,000 people there. I saw him the next day. He said, I have never, ever, ever had such a welcome. I said, you probably never had one like it again, so milk it. And he said to me before I left, he said, I want to say to you, he said, we've had many people stay in this hotel. He said, I know there's big churches in Singapore. There's a lot of preachers and speakers come. But he said, you're the first one. He said this to me, you're the first preacher and Christian ever to notice me. That's all they're asking from us. Go out this week and notice people and start getting empty.
Paul Scanlon, come on, let's stand and give him a big welcome, big thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in. If you said the salvation prayer today, we'd love for you to email connecttofaith@soulchurch.com so we can talk a little bit more about this incredible decision that you've just made. And if at any point in the service you felt moved to give to any of our local or global initiatives, then head to soulchurch.com and click on giving at the top of the page. We're so glad you tuned in today, and we hope to see you again soon. God bless.